There's a certain kind of silence that doesn't come from peace. It comes from exhaustion, the kind that forms when your heart learns that asking hurts more than staying quiet. Some children stop crying not because they've stopped feeling, but because they've realized that no one is really listening. They grow up in homes where love isn't cruel, but absent, where affection is rationed, where emotions are something you clean up before guests arrive, where every outburst is met with disappointment instead of understanding. These are the children who learn early that needs are dangerous, that vulnerability is a currency they can't afford. So they build invisible walls made of politeness, responsibility, and premature maturity. And when people praise them for being so calm or so good, they smile, because that's the mask that keeps them safe. But inside, something small begins to fade. A voice that once whispered, "Please love me," becomes a whisper that says, "Don't bother." It's not rebellion, it's resignation. The quiet death of expectation, the slow surrender of a child who realizes that tenderness must be self-taught. You see, emotional neglect doesn't leave bruises, it leaves confusion. Because how do you explain the ache of what never happened? The hug that wasn't given, the words that weren't said, the presence that was never truly felt. It's like growing up in a house filled with air, but never oxygen. So they adapt. They become what everyone needs them to be: the caretaker, the achiever, the one who doesn't need much. They learn to read moods like weather reports, always scanning faces for signs of danger, disappointment, or withdrawal. And every time they sense it coming, they shrink a little smaller just to keep the peace. But peace built on self-erasure isn't peace, it's quiet suffocation. As they grow older, that silence travels with them. It shows up in friendships, in relationships, in the way they love. They say, "It's fine," when it isn't. They say, "I understand," even when they're breaking inside. They say, "Don't worry about me," because they were trained to worry about everyone else first. They think love is something you earn by not being a burden. They think worth is something proven through usefulness. They think emotional distance is normal because it's all they've ever known. And so the pattern continues. The child who stopped asking for love grows into the adult who doesn't know how to receive it. Sometimes they meet someone kind, someone who sees the cracks and tries to reach through. But even then they flinch, because love, when it finally arrives, feels foreign, like sunlight after years underground. Too bright, too sudden, too much. They want it, but they don't trust it, because deep down they're waiting for it to disappear, the way it always did when they were small. And that's the tragedy of emotional neglect. It teaches you to distrust what you need most. You begin to believe that being unseen is safer than being disappointed, that being independent is better than being vulnerable, that silence is love's closest substitute. But no amount of strength can heal what was broken in the silence, because the wound isn't about what happened, it's about what never did. But here's the thing. The child who stopped asking for love never really disappeared. They just went into hiding, waiting for you to remember them. Healing isn't about becoming stronger. It's about becoming softer, with the parts of yourself you learn to abandon. It's about walking back into that quiet room in your memory, where your younger self still sits, small, patient, and unheard. It's about kneeling down beside them and saying, "I'm here now." You don't have to ask anymore. That moment, that reunion, is where transformation begins. Because love, at its core, isn't something we receive from others. It's something we learn to extend to ourselves when no one else did. When you choose to speak kindly to your own pain, you rewrite the story that silence wrote for you. When you allow yourself to cry without shame, you give that child back their voice. When you stop chasing validation and start listening inwardly, you become the parent you always needed. That's what healing really is. Not perfection, not detachment, not endless positivity, but the simple, radical act of coming home to yourself. For years, you may have thought you were broken because you struggled to connect. But you weren't broken. You were protecting the part of you that once felt invisible. You built walls not to keep others out, but to keep that child safe inside. And maybe now you're ready to open the door, to say, it's okay to need. It's okay to want love. It's okay to rest. It's okay to be seen. Because the truth is, you were never too much. You were just given too little. You don't have to keep proving your worth. You don't have to keep earning your place. You don't have to keep apologizing for existing. The love you were denied doesn't define your capacity to give it now. In fact, it's often those who were most unloved who become the gentlest souls, because they know, firsthand, what it means to go unnoticed. They know the sacredness of kindness. They understand the weight of silence. They love differently, deeply, quietly, without conditions. They love like someone who remembers what it's like to be forgotten. So if you've ever felt unseen, unheard, or emotionally invisible, this is your reminder. You don't need permission to be real. You don't need to shrink to be safe. You don't need to harden to be strong. You just need to remember that softness is not weakness. It's your return to what was once true. Healing doesn't mean rewriting the past. It means reclaiming the future. It means giving yourself the love that once went unanswered and realizing that you have always been worthy of it. Because somewhere within you, the child who stopped asking for love is still waiting for your embrace. And when you finally give it, the silence breaks, the ache dissolves, and the story begins again, not as a tragedy, but as a homecoming. Maybe that's what love really is. Not something you search for in others, but something you awaken within yourself, until your presence becomes the very thing you once longed to receive.